bit of a breather. Kumlan of like Gemara, today's Gemara is of Gimchal Gimel Amud Aleph. It's a bit different than Gemara until now, a bit easier. So, interesting concept. You know, when you do an Aveira, there's two things, two components. First of all, is the act itself, the Maisa, and then there is the intent. So we always know that if you had no intent, but you commit an Aveira, you still, if it's done by mistake, you still have to bring a Karban Chatas, 36 Averas, and so on and so forth. Here we have a concept where let's say you intended to do an Aveira, but you didn't end up doing one. What happens then? Your machshava was to do an Aveira, but there was no Maisa. How do we treat that? So the Mishnah, Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. Ha'isha shenodra ben Nazir, a woman took upon herself to be a Nazir, v'hoisa sheisa beyayin umetamala meisim, but she drank wine and she went to the cemetery, for example, she will get 40 lashes. And we learned the Mishnah two ways. Either the husband annulled it, but the annulment only takes place from now on. So since she committed that sin prior to the annulment, she gets the full brunt of the law. Or we're talking about the annulment actually undermines it retrospectively, but nevertheless, she is talking about a case where the husband did not actually annul it. Next case, okay. What about Hafala Baila? The husband annulled it, but he but she had no idea. She drinks wine, she went to go ahead and committed a sin, thinking she's doing a sin. She had no idea that her husband annulled the neder. No, she had no idea that actually she's not committing a sin because she's not a Nazir. She doesn't get 40 lashes, but nevertheless, a sin was committed. Rabbi Yehuda says, true, you don't get 40 lashes from the Torah, but Tisbrig Makas Martis, she still will get the punishment from the rabbis. Makas Martis is a term we use for Malkus Midrabanan, which means you're a rebel and you have to get Malkus. Argument Rishonim, whether you get 39 just like the Torah, or whether we continue giving. Some Rishonim say until Adsha Tate say Nafsha, until either she passes on or she regrets what she did. Okay. So here we have a case where she intended to do an Aveira, but she didn't end up doing one. The pasuk says, if the husband annuls a neder, isha hafaram, the husband annulled it, Hashem yislach, and God should forgive her. And the obvious question is, if her neder is annulled, why does she need to be forgiven? The Isha Shahafal Abayla is talking about the husband annulled it, she had no idea. That's what the pasuk is talking about. She tzricha kapara uslicha, and for that she needs an atonement because her intention was to do the wrong thing. At the end, it turned out to be it wasn't, but you still need forgiveness for that. Eitzel pasuk when Akiva came to this pasuk, he would cry. So we have a number of times where Akiva would laugh when he came to a pasuk, and sometimes he would cry. And this is one of those. And why is that? He would say, somebody wanted to eat non-kosher, but it turned out to be that it was kosher. In other words, they intended to commit a sin, and it turned out to be it wasn't. Yet this woman needs to be forgiven. If somebody intended to eat basar chazan, intended to commit a sin, and he actually committed a sin, imagine the kind of punishment that you deserve. Surely you have to seek atonement. Okay. So here you have an example where somebody intended to commit a sin but didn't end up doing one. Now we'll give examples of reverse. Similar, we say, they had no idea, but and committed a sin. Should carry a sin. Now we learned a carbon Oshem means where you're not sure if you committed a sin. So for example, we'll have in the Gemara Krisis two opinions as to how it works. One opinion is there's one piece of fat sitting on a table, but you're not sure if this is kosher fats known as shuman or whether this is non-kosher fats known as chaylev. And you went ahead and you ate it, and we have no idea whether you committed a sin or not. You bring a carbon Oshem. That's called chaticha achas, one piece. There's another opinion in the Gemara that in that situation you don't bring a carbon Oshem. Why? Because maybe you didn't commit a sin at all. When do you bring a karamashim? If there were two pieces of fat on the table, one was definitely kosher, one was definitely treif. This is called ikva isura. The isur was established, but you just don't know for sure you committed a sin or not. But it definitely was an isur sitting on the table. That's when you bring an asham. So Gemara gives two more examples there, and that is the pasuk said that if you weren't aware you did a sin, you're not sure if you did commit a sin, you have to bring guilt offering. So ma mishin is kavan al b'yad. You thought you were thinking that this is kosher meat. But all of you, the Chazal turned to read that this fat was actually non-kosher meat. There was one piece, suffix shel shumin, suffix shel chaydav. You're not sure what it was, kosher, non-kosher. You have to carry the sin. Whatever you intended to commit a sin to eat non-kosher meat, and you actually did. Halachas kama kama. Surely you need atonement. Isa ben Yehuda says the same thing, but he holds like the opinion that you need two pieces. You weren't aware, you're not sure if you committed a sin, you carry a guilt, and you have to bring an offering. You intended to eat kosher, turned out to be not kosher. You're not even sure. You had two pieces. One of non-kosher fats, one kosher. So you have two pieces of fats on the table. And yet you're considered guilty. And here, maybe you didn't commit a sin, and yet you have to seek kapara. If you intended to eat treif of meat, and you ate treif of meat, halachas kama kama, surely then you need atonement. Yidvu hadavim, and this people, they grieve all those people who are sad. Now, so you have three different psukim, basically all saying the same thing. That even though it's not 100% sure you committed a sin, either you had no intention of committing a sin, or you doubted that you did a sin, or you had intention to commit a sin, but you didn't commit a sin, and yet you need to seek out a kapara. Surely, in the case where you intended to commit a sin and you committed a sin, surely you need to have atonement. So we have three different psukim basically saying the same thing. So you might want to know why do we need three different psukim saying the same thing? So we need. If all we know is about a woman, over there we'll say, over here you have to seek out kapara. By the case of the woman when she thought she was another, but she wasn't. I can argue over there she wanted to commit a sin. Makes sense. She needs to have a kapara. For someone who had no intention of committing a sin, turned out to be a sin, maybe you don't have to have kapara. Maybe a woman needs kapara. Her intention was to do an avera. So therefore you need to have kapara. But a piece of meat, a piece of fats, suffix shel chaylev, suffix shel shuman. You're not even sure if you committed a sin. Your intention was to do the right thing, and not only intention was, but you're not even sure if you committed a sin. Maybe you don't have to seek kapara, atonement. We only knew the case of the fats. I would say the fact is there's a chance she committed a sin. Isha, in the case of a woman, she did not commit a sin because the husband annulled it. The hafala baila, the head tater. The fact is now she did not commit a sin at all because she wasn't a nazir. Maybe it's because she thought that she committed sin. Who said she needs an atonement? That's why you need both. If you knew about these two things, I haven't ever thought I would say, okay, these two kapara is good enough. I would say these two an atonement, because either the woman just had intention but no sin, or one piece of fats, you didn't really have intention to commit a sin, and there's a good possibility you didn't commit a sin. And there's nothing on the table here. Maybe there's nothing treif here. So maybe that's why it's enough to atone a slicha kapara with a card, whatever. Or but we're not sure you committed a sin at all. But the two pieces of fats on the table. One of them is definitely treif, and you knew that. You just took one, and you're not sure which one you took. In that case, maybe you're actually almost like a deliberate sin. It's not just an inadvertent sin, because you knew there's treif on that table for 100%, and you took a risk. So one is non-kosher, one is kosher. The equally sort of definitely is treif on the table. Maybe maybe to have an atonement is not good enough because it's as if you did it b'mezid. comes to tell you that it makes no difference. There's an interesting rush here. The rush wants to know, okay, we have three psukim and we're asking why we need all three. Within the Nazir, the Torah uses three different expressions. One in the case of the husband and the wife, that she needs a slicha, and we just said is talking about she thought she was a Nazir, turned out to be she wasn't. One was in the case of a father and the daughter, the exact same thing. It says she needs a kapara. And one in the case where the girl is engaged and the father and the husband together are the neder, and says that you need to be slicha kapara. So the Rosh asks, why do we need three psukim by Nazir? So he says an interesting thing, because when it comes to a husband and wife, we would have thought that a husband, a husband and wife, they are one and the same. And because the woman has a right to think, look, I really don't want this. I was angry, I became a Nazir, I don't really want to be a Nazir. But because my husband and me, we are one and the same, surely my husband realizes that, and he is going to know me. So therefore, when it comes to that case, we can say that even her intention wasn't really an intention to do a sin, because she thought in the back of her mind that probably he knows me, but a father and daughter don't have that kind of relationship. So therefore, we would have thought that a father and a daughter, she really intended to commit a sin. And the Torah says that she needs a kapara slicha, or the father and daughter, there she intended to do a sin. In the case of the husband, she probably thought in the back of her mind, husband understands me, and therefore I'm sure he knows me, there's no real sin. And the Torah is telling you that even so, you need a kapara. You need a kapara. Anyway, so the Gemara further talking about things which are unintentional. There's a passage where it says, "Ki yishadim darkei Hashem." Hashem's ways are straight. Tzadikim yelchu bam. Tzadikim will travel in them. Upoishim yichashlu bam. But sinners will stumble on them. That means there's one activity for a tzaddik, it's considered a righteous thing, and for a rush, it's considered a non-righteous thing. What are we talking about? So we say, Abiechon said, Moshe Adams compared to two people shetzolu as pischei, and they both roasted their carbon pesach. Echad ochlu l'shum mitzvah. One of them did it for the sake of a mitzvah, that's a tzaddik. Echad ochlu l'shum achila gasa. One of them ate it with stuff. They were so full, didn't enjoy it at all. And that would be the Rosh. For those who ate it when they were so full, they are what? They consider a sinner. Yes, so they're both eating Korban Pesach. One person gets credit and one person doesn't. Shlokish, I don't understand. Hi, Rosh Kodesh. How can you call the second person a Russia? Okay, he was full. You can't call him a Russia. As Rish Lakish says, that the loikoi of a mitzvah lamuvcha. Okay, I'll grant you he didn't commit a mitzvah, he didn't observe the mitzvah the way it should be, in a deal way. Or the pace of mikah, the fact that it is the right thing. Pesach asked me, learning Mariyuma, that if somebody on Yom Kippur ate an achila gasa, it's not considered eating at all, because it's not considered food, you're not enjoying it. So, and here the Shloki says you still did a mitzvah. So Rabbeinu Tam says there are two kinds of achila gasa. One is where you're full and you don't enjoy eating anymore, and one is where you're so full that looking at food makes you feel, it just looks repugnant because you can't look at food. And when we say in the Gemara Yuma on Yom Kippur, if you ate when achila gasa is talking about you can't look at food anymore. So therefore, that's not called eating. Here we're talking about you're just full. You're just full. And or another answer, so the Rosh gives, that by Pesach, by Yom Kippur, you went ahead and you ate. So we say achil gas over here by Korban Pesach. Why is it considered you still did a mitzvah? What should you do? The fact is that you're full and you have a mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach, so you have no choice but to eat it, even though right now you're full and you don't enjoy the food at all. So you can't say that you do it. The mitzvah says you have to eat, so you ate it, but it's not an ideal way. So the Shlokish therefore says, what's an example of both two people doing the same thing, but one will get credit for it and one won't? I'll give you an example. He says, two people. One person has his wife and his sister sleeping in the same house. Another person has his wife and sister sleeping in the same house. The first person, dark, whatever it is, ended up with his own wife in the same room. The other one was dark, everything else ended up with his sister. So they both did the same act, but one of them did the right thing, and one of them did the wrong thing. The one who had relations with his wife, tzaddikim yel chabam is a tzaddik. The one that encountered his sister, consider sinner. Says the Gemara, meet dummy. This is one act. Two different stories. We're talking about where they're both doing exactly the same thing. Even though they're both doing the same ma'isa, but it's very different. This person is doing it with his wife, and this person with his sister. Two different people. And then we're talking about one way. In your example is two different ways. One had relations with his wife, and one relation with his sister. What are you comparing? If you want an example, I'll give you an example. Light, the story of Light, and his two daughters. After the story of Zdain and Amora, Light and his two daughters, they were hiding, and Light's daughters had relations with him. And here's an example. They both were involved in the same story. The girls were tzaddikim because they thought they were the last surviving people. They heard about the Mabul, and again, they saw what happened. They thought there was nobody left around, even though Avram would have been left around, but they thought Avram was barren, and sorry, they wouldn't have any kids, and therefore they did l'shem shemayim, so they populate the world, and Light did not. Says the Gemara. The girls, their intention was a mitzvah. Tzaddikim yelchabam, we're calling them tzaddikim, and who Light should establish l'shem aveda. His intention was avera. It's considered Russia. Says, well, how do you know? But maybe he also intended to do mitzvah. Why do we dismiss Light? Says, this entire pasuk that's referring to Light is actually in indicating to us that Light himself was very lustful and he committed an aved. How do I know? The pasuk says Vayisa Light. We're going to break down the pasuk word for word. Vayisa Light and Light raised, but we find the pasuk similar to that expression. Vatisa Eishes Adonav Es Eina. We find the same expression by Yosef that she lifted her eyes, and the intention was to commit a sin. Kihi Yeshara Be'einav. The next pasuk says Es Einav. Light raised his eyes. So the pasuk says, "Kihi yeshara be'einav." It says in the pasuk that because he found him, because he found him that was good in his eyes. That's the story. Shimshon. Shimshon said he wanted to live with this woman because yeshara be'einav. It's good in my eyes. Again, so we see every word in the pasuk is telling us how lustful Light was. Then it says Vayar. It says the same expression. When Shem saw the son of Chamor, saw Leah, he was lustful. It's called Kikar Yarden. Light saw the entire Kikar Yarden. We find a pasuk Kibadisha Zaina that a person is prepared to pay for a woman who's a harlot ad Kikar Lechem, to the last morsel of bread. Again, we find Kikar. Then it says Kula Mashke, why he chose, Light chose this town, because Kula Mashke full of Mashke. And it says in a pasuk, another pasuk, again, that word Mashke. Elka Achrem Ayabe, I'll go after my lover. Leis Nelachmi provides me with bread, my water, Tzimrai, Pishti, my wool and my linen, Shemani, my oil, Vishikuya, and my Mashke. And again, we're talking about a Zayn here. So all that describes Light. The Mainus honest, he was drunk. Tana, we learned it says he didn't know when he went to sleep and he woke up. Why the word v'kuma is missing above? For the older girl, Light had no idea when he fell asleep. When he woke up, it's as if by taking away the above, as if the entire word is missing. That means he woke up and he realized what's going on. There's the Gemara. So what? So what? Realized it's too late. We might have a Leila never. What else could he have done? Might have a habit. Whatever happened, happened. Says the Gemara. Nafkamina. No, you're right. The first night, whatever happened, happened. But the following day, he shouldn't have got drunk. He knows what happened last night. He shouldn't have got drunk. He's being on the start. So that proved that he was guilty. Talking about Light, Dodash Rava Dash might have seen. It says in pasuk, Och Nifsha Mikirias Oz. It says in pasuk that Och Nifsha, that a brother Nifsha rebelled Mikirias Oz from a city that was strong. What does that mean? So the Gemara, and the pasuk continues, Umidyan Kibrech Aman, and the fighting was like the bolt on the palace door. The bolt on the palace door doesn't let people in. So we're saying that this pasuk is actually referring to light. So light was a sinner. Och nifsha mekeyas is the light referring to light. Why is he called a brother? Pirish Ma'avram, because it says there that because light was like the brother. My Avram said to light, we're brothers. Let's separate. So therefore, he referred to him as a brother. And then the pasuk says that Umidyonim Kibriach Alman, that he locked the palace and he couldn't go back. Is Shetato Midyani Kibriach Alman. He placed both not to allow them back into the palace. What's I referring to? Because his two daughters, one became the nation of Ammon, one became the nation of Moab, and none of their sons can ever join the Jewish faith. Even their Megaya, they can never marry. They can never marry, but they treat my niece and my avis, the girls can, but not the males. Dodash Rava said the Rava, very interesting in the introduction of Ramosha Feinstein in the last of his chuvas. I can't remember it, I read it for a long time ago, but it's fascinating. He talks about some dibuk that entered a person, and this is in his lifetime, and it turned out to be those daughters of light, and they were saying that you disparaged us. And what kind of tzaddikim they were, as the Gemara says right here, tzaddikim yelchabam, referring to the daughters of light. Says the Gemara talking about those light daughters. Rabbi Tamer used to make and the pasuk taiva yevakish nifrad, that somebody who's a nifrad who's separated is looking for taivas, for desires, ulechol toshia, and in all the strengths, Yizgala will be revealed who they are. So we teach as follows: the taiva yevakish nifrad. This nifrad was looking for taiva. That's talking about light. Ubechol Tushia Yizgal, and all the strength should be revealed. Shenizgala Koloine, that his shame was revealed bebate kenesias ubebate medrashas, in shuls and in yeshivas, because in the Torah Shabbat it says Amayni Mavel Kalashem, and in Torah Shabbat it says it further that the males cannot come in and join the Jewish faith. So therefore, in Beis HaKnesses where we read the Torah, there it says we read the Torah, and in Beis HaMedrash we learn Gemara. We read about it in the Gemara as well. But now we learned Amayni Me'avi, Asurin are Asur Yisurin Israel, and they're forbidden forever. Amaru Zadula Tama Zinsa Zimri Zina. Tama had a relation with her father-in-law, and she behaved like a harlot, and so did Zimri. And yet look at the outcome. Tama Zinsa Yatam and Malach and Levin. Descendants from her were kings and prophets. David HaMelech came from her, and so too Yeshaya Navi came from her, as all the Rishonim say. Actually, we learned that David HaMelech himself was a Navi. I'm not sure why we have to go to Yeshaya. We can say that the same person was a Melech and a Navi. And but Zimri, Zina, and what happened as a result of Zimri ben Salin and the Pasha Pinchas, Noflu Olog, Kamar Avavas Misrael, more than 20,000 Yidden passed away as a result of that. And why? Because Tamar did it intention for a mitzvah, she wanted to have children, and Zimri did it just pure lust. I'm not talking about Tamar Gedoyle Aveda Lishma, the mitzvah Shalai Lishma, an Avera that was done for the purpose of for a good purpose is greater than a mitzvah done without having any proper intent. Says the Gemara, a mitzvah is not proper intent. You're disparaging. A person should observe mitzvahs and learn Torah, even though they're not doing it for the right reasons. And not doing the right reasons, right Torah means they're doing it to get, let's say, to have covered and so on. Not doing it, not using the Torah to find ways of, to mock the Torah, chas v'shalom, but just for covered, for pure self-aggrandizement. You still do that. Eventually come to Lishman. So Lishma is a big thing. How can you say that Avera Lishma is better than a mitzvah Lishma when a mitzvah Lishma leads you to mitzvah Lishma? So Gemara says you're right. It's equal. It's not better, but it's equal to a mitzvah of Loi Lishma. The Chesiv says, Tevorech menoshim Yeel, that we read out a few weeks ago, that Yeel should be blessed. Eishes Chever Hakeni, the wife of Chever Hakeni, menoshim ba'oil tevorech. Amongst women from the tent, she should be blessed. She's the one that enticed sister to come into a tent. And she had relations with sister, and we'll see in the Gemara soon, 7 different relations, intimate relations, in order to weaken him. And then she took the peg from the tent and she smashed it through his temple, killed him, and saved Klal Yisrael. So it says in the pasuk that she should be benched. She should that Yoel should be benched, equal to the women from the tent. Now, what does that mean? Mam Noshim Sheba Oil, who are the women of the tent? Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Now, what's up to do with anything? So the Rishonim just say that Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they all it says in the Torah refers to them at different places by a tent, like by Rivka. Yitzchak brought Rivka to the home of Sarah's mother's tent. They have Sarah there, Rivka there, and so too with Rachel, Leah. But so what? So Rashi actually says a fascinating thing, that the Imais, they did something that was Shaloi Lishma. They did a good thing, but they did not do it for the right reasons. So Yael, who did an Aveda, Lishma was equal to the Imais. Now, where did the Imais do a mitzvah that with not with the right intention? So Rashi takes out Rivka. In his version of the Gemara, it's only Sarah, Rachel, and Leah. They all gave their husbands their shivcha to marry, and they did it out of jealousy. Rachel did out of jealousy for Leah. Leah had kids and she didn't, and then Leah got jealous for Rachel, so she gave. They did not do it for the right reasons. And I guess we're putting Sarah in the same boat by giving Hagar. And Rivka was taken out. So that's what the word means. The Himois did not do the mitzvah lishma, and Yael, therefore, is equal to them. Says the Gemara, 7 different intimate relations did that Rosh sister have with her then. And Shenema, it says the Pasuk, Bein Ragleh, he fell and he crouched between her legs, and says 7 different terms talking about crouching and prostrating, which all refers to intimacy. So and she did it all to weaken it. So but the fact is about Kameshanya, maybe the fact that she also benefited from it, she had some pleasure. No, she didn't. So there's something bad about it as well. It can't be only good. If a Russia has pleasure, it bothers the tzaddik. It's considered actual evil for the tzaddik. Shneimar, as it says, you love him was born. Be careful. I'm talking to Yaakov, good or bad. Now, what's wrong with love and talking good to Yaakov? I understand why he was warned not to. Why not good? Allah does not prove that the good of a Rasha is bad for a tzaddik. So Lavan was warned, don't talk to Yaakov even bad, even good. That's conclusive. Says let's analyze it. It's always yasik adam mitzvah. A person should study Torah and observe mitzvahs. Even they don't do it with the right intentions. Because you start out without the wrong intentions, but eventually you do it for the right ones. And where do you see this? Mem beis karbanis. Shehikriv balakarosha. Balakarosha brought up a total of 42 karbanis. Every mizbeach he brought 7 sheep, 7 rams, and 3 times they did it. So that's a total of 14 times 3 is 42. And that's Chus, Yotza Memeno Rus. He had a descendant called Rus. So we see that even though he did not do the mitzvah Lishman at all, he did it so that he should be able to overpower the Yidden. And nevertheless, he got some merit from that. Rus Bas B'nai Shel Eglon, what does that have to do with Balak? Rus was a granddaughter of Eglon Melech Moav, and Eglon Melech Moav was a descendant from Balak. She wasn't actually the granddaughter. She lived, 200 years after Eglon, but means a descendant. How do you know Hashem does not hold back reward, even just from a nice conversation? The older girl of light, called her child she gave birth to Moav. Now Moav comes from Me'av. She declared to the whole world, it came from my father. She wasn't embarrassed. Is the Karisa Moav? The Torah says, well, she had no tznius. She wasn't embarrassed. Al totzet as Moav, va'al tizkebam milcham. I don't want you to wage a war and be belligerent with Moav. So milchama would delight. I don't want you to wage a war with them. If you want to antagonize them, no problem. The younger girl, the Karisa ben Ami, she called her son Amin, which means a member of our nation. She didn't want to publicize that it came from her father, so she was much more discreet. On Malay, it says there, don't even oppress them. Don't antagonize them at all. So interesting that even though the older one was Moav and she had no tznius, nevertheless she's the one who gave birth to David, not to Rus, which eventually gave birth to David. A person should try to be marked into do a mitzvah as soon as possible, the earliest possible opportunity. The fact that Moav, the two girls thought they were doing a mitzvah, and yet which one became the mother of Moav, eventually of Rus, was the first one. Why? Because she jumped in to do her mitzvah first. They thought, even though it turned out to be it wasn't the mitzvah, but they thought that because even a guy is not allowed to. We had an argument if a guy is allowed to have relations with a daughter, even if a guy is permitted according to that opinion, but they took upon themselves not to. So, but they thought that they were doing a mitzvah, just to make sure that humanity continues. So, therefore, the fact that it was only one night earlier, Shekad Mosa, the fact that it was one night earlier that the younger one, that the first girl who stepped in, and the older girl before the younger one is Zachsa the Kadma Arba Doides B'Yisrael Malchus. They jumped in ahead, and 4 generations earlier already, they already had they got the kingdom. In other words, from Moav, from Ammon came Rechava. From Ammon came Rechava, which was who came from Nama Ammonis, and he was already much later because David came from Rus, which was before. And we count 4 generations. We count Ovid, with the end of Rus, Ovid, Yishai, and David and Shlomo. Ovid and Yishai, because they were the ones who eventually sired David and Shlomo, they also given credit as if they were kings. So we have 4 generations of tzaddikim, and that started way before Rechavam. Why? Because their great-great-grandmother, was jumped into the mitzvah one night before the other ones. And so that basically ends the Gemara here.